This is the April 25th, 2017 meeting of the Fairfield Town Planning and Zoning Commission. First item on our agenda is meeting minutes from April 18, 2017. So we have Commissioner Barrett and Commissioner Noonan both absent, right? So Commissioner Corcoran and Commissioner Ford, you are both sitting for everything tonight, okay?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kennelly. Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Any matters for discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is old business, zoning regulation amendment, application of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to amend section 12.5.9 of the zoning regulations, package stores in the neighborhood design business districts.
Mr. Chairman, this was presented at our last week. This is a regulation amendment proposed by this commission to reduce the maximum size of package stores in the neighborhood design district, presently permitted up to 4,000 square feet. The proposal is to reduce it to 1,500 square feet.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kennelly. Commissioner Alessi?
We're good?
We're
A lot of work went into this?
It did.
Let's move it along.
Yes, sir. It's well taken. Commissioner Kennelly?
Just want to say my thanks to the Vice Chairman, who was the kind of driving force behind this. I think it's a very good idea. So we're going to have package stores, but keeping them a reasonable size seems sensible.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Sure, we'll vote on this next one.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The regulation amendment is passed unanimously. So we have Commissioner Noonan now. Which of the...
Dan will do number 47.
Commissioner Ford, you're on for Commissioner Barrett's. All right. Next item on our agenda is a scenic road. Scenic road petition of Catherine Goodman to have Congress Street between Brett Road and Burr Street declared a scenic road. Public hearing last week.
Yes, also presented last week. This is a petition that has the requisite signatures and representation of the folks that own property fronting on Congress Street between Brett Road and Burr Street. As was mentioned last week, Brett Road to North Street is already on the scenic road list, so this would just extend it southerly down to Burr Street. So it meets, it satisfies the petition criteria.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Kennelly?
First, I'd like to thank Mrs. Goodman for bringing this forward. I think that anytime we can do make efforts to further enhance the character of our community with these kinds of efforts, so that they're worthwhile ones, and we kind of know running for office and getting elected, even though we're volunteers, what's involved. But oftentimes folks who are petitioners who get involved in a single issue don't realize how much it's going to consume them in terms of time and all the rest. So, I very much appreciate that effort, and I think it's a reasonable and sensible addition to the inventory of scenic roads in town. So hopefully we'll all support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Alessi?
I'd like to agree. I mean, Ms. Goodman did a wonderful job. I hope she continues it and extends the road all the way down to Black Rock Turnpike, but this is a very good addition to our town. So I'll be supporting this amendment.
Very good. Anyone else have any other comments? No? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The scenic road petition is granted unanimously. Next item is compliance. 222 Post Road, compliance application of Natina Sunsum to establish outdoor dining at an existing restaurant.
Mr. Chairman, this matter was tabled last week with some direction and guidance for us to have the applicant revise some plans. We have not yet received those, so I would recommend this matter again be tabled.
Okay. And I have a motion to table.
Motion to table, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to table by Commissioner Kennelly.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Francis. Anyone have any comments or questions about the motion to table? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion to table is granted unanimously. Next item is public hearing. 185 Thorpe Street is first up. Application of Cinto Thorpe LLC to amend Section 10.7 of the zoning regulations, a zone change from design industrial to residence B to design residence district, and a special permit and coastal site plan for a 58-unit residential development. This is a continued hearing. We're now in the public comment portion of that. After the public has an opportunity to talk, then the applicant will have their reply, their rebuttal, and then the public hearing will be closed on this application. So we had Mr. Reber, who was up when we finished last. Is he here? Would he like to speak? Excellent.
I just want to thank Jim, the new planning director, for answering endless questions, and Dolores for providing endless copies for me. I'd like to cover 4 areas. The first is conditions of approval. If you decide to approve this project, I have a list of conditions for you to consider. I'm not going to review them in detail. Attorney Fallon and I met last week at his invitation, and I appreciate the opportunity he provided to discuss the conditions of approval. He was very accommodating and genuinely interested in dialogue. I think he's prepared to respond to that list of conditions, and I hope that if he agrees to some or all of them, that whatever ones you endorse will be memorialized in the approval, so there will be no misunderstandings later. My original list included building out one of the affordable units to full ADA compliance for sale to eligible handicapped elderly persons. I took it off the list because Attorney Fallon agreed with it. I'd like to see this become a regular feature of affordable housing projects. It provides needed housing for the handicapped elderly who do not have any special status under 830G. I discussed this issue with Mark Barnhart, our Economic Development Director, who's also the liaison with the Affordable Housing Committee. He provided a statement that he got from the Connecticut Fair Housing Center, where they said, quote, "If the housing meets accessibility standards, as it must if it is a covered multifamily dwelling of 4 or more units, then reserving units for people with disabilities is permitted." Thanks to Attorney Fallon and to the applicant for making this thoughtful accommodation for those who have special needs. Moving on, I'd like to discuss 3 reasons why I think the application you received is incomplete. The first is that it was submitted without an affordability plan. The plan is required under the application, and I really don't understand why you scheduled the hearing without it. Attorney Fallon has now prepared a plan, and in a spirit of accommodation, he incorporated elements from Fairfield's Affordable Housing Committee model plan. And I appreciate his efforts to do that. It's going to benefit your commission because the plan includes a much better reporting system than the one in most affordability plans you receive, which are based on the Shipman and Goodwin model from 2000. I think the affordability plan Attorney Fallon submitted this week is excellent. It's an exemplary plan that I hope others will emulate in the future. Nevertheless, the plan hasn't been made part of the public record in sufficient time for inspection and response from the public. Personally, I think Attorney Fallon's done a great job in providing this plan, but the public hasn't seen it. I've seen it, but I don't represent anybody, including the Granville Neighborhood Association. Secondly, the applicant's presentation does not adequately address the issue of property values. A special permit requires that the applicant demonstrate the impact of the project on home values, quote, to protect property values in the neighborhood, unquote. Some of you may recall that in 2013, the applicant at that time had an expert put on an extended presentation about home values, which was then contested by the public. This time, the applicant and Attorney Fallon have merely made general representations that the project will have a positive impact on home values. There seems to be insufficient documentation for you to reach a rational decision on the impact of this project on home values. The third insufficiency is a minor one. It was identified by the question by one of your commissioners last time. What is the proposed border fence going to look like? That fence is what many of the abutting neighbors will be seeing for years, but there's been no opportunity for them to see what the fence will be and to offer their opinions about it. Will it, quote, harmonize with the neighborhood? The neighbors are unable to render an opinion on that. It's the first time I recall a project with a major footprint failing to identify fencing. All three of these omissions cannot be cured by Attorney Fallon addressing them in his rebuttal because the public will not have a chance to evaluate and respond to these issues. The third area I want to cover is deficiencies in the proposed text amendment. You may recall that last Tuesday, you heard a structural engineer discuss how narrow Thorpe Street is and how congested it becomes when there's just one delivery truck on the street. Even the representative from Frederick P. Clark and Associates stated that Thorpe Street is, and I quote from his testimony last week, somewhat narrow for a two-way traffic, unquote. Under those conditions, how can you consider eliminating the need for a major collector road? Thorpe cannot handle major collector traffic, even with the additional outlet of Granville. Attorney Fallon could have proposed this text amendment any time over the years, but he chose to do so now by closely tying it to his underlying application for the project. In fact, he did not discuss this text amendment in any detail until Commissioner Keneally asked him a very probing question about it, which frankly Attorney Fallon failed to adequately answer. Attorney Fallon stated he was not aware of any implications of this proposed text amendment on other properties. I'm glad that Commissioner Keneally requested staff conduct a broader analysis. I think that Linwood Avenue, Ardmore Street, where Mohegan Valley Concrete is located, and Lacey Place are all streets that will be impacted by this text amendment. Lacey Place perhaps the least, because the two main properties there have frontage on the Post Road, but as we know from right across the street, where two properties had to be amalgamated to be used, and that there was controversy over an entrance on Saskville Road, that we can't assume that just having frontage on the Post Road won't result in the need of Lacey Place for development. Perhaps the text amendment language can be narrowed to reduce its implications for other properties, but even then, the fact remains that Thorpe is an inadequate street for the type of use proposed here. As planners, you should also note that Exide property will be developed in the next few years, and there's a proposal for a large apartment complex on Fairfield Woods Road. A lot more traffic is coming to the already congested Mill Plain Road, Post Road, Thorpe Street intersection. In 2013, you determined that this text amendment was not consistent with the town plan. I don't believe that's changed. Attorney Fallon told you that its underlying application is consistent with the town plan because it represents the kind of transition the plan calls for. I disagree. The town plan contemplates the type of transition we see on South Pine Creek, Beaumont, Lindbergh, Fairfield Place, and other streets where there's commercial development on the Post Road, transitioning to multifamily housing on the adjoining residential streets, which then transitions to single-family housing. That's not the case with this application. The former Fairfield Lumber property has single-family homes on two sides and the marsh on the third side. On the zoning map, the property looks like an island connected to the rest of the town by the narrow isthmus of Thorpe Street. The property is in the floodplain, and the town plan notes issues with high-density building in the floodplain when it says that, quote, there are significant challenges to manage the infrastructure, population density, public safety, and flooding concerns, unquote. A recent study by a group chaired by Michael Bloomberg and endorsed by Freddie Mac predicts the New York area will see 1 to 1.5 feet of sea level rise by 2050 and up to 4 feet of rise by the end of the century. They also see a 1 in 100 chance of a rise of up to 7 feet by the end of the century. I presume the condos you're considering are meant to be around for decades, so I hope you'll consider the risks involved in approving a project that's already in the floodplain, where the risk of significant flood incursion will continue to grow. Finally, and I'm almost done. Finally, I'd like to talk very briefly about traffic, specifically implications for increased traffic in the Granville neighborhood due to the proposed road opening. Frederick P. Clark and Associates told you that traffic on Granville will increase by over 50% in the mornings, and that assumes that 77% of the traffic will use Thorpe. Should more traffic use Granville, obviously the traffic burden in that neighborhood will be even worse. I hope you can think of what this traffic will do to the neighborhood as a factor of neighborhood harmony. When your commission discussed the Sunrise Assisted Living Facility, Commissioner Francis read a very powerful statement about neighborhood harmony. The type of analysis Commissioner Francis enunciated really applies here in a different way. It's not the appearance of a building or its size that's at issue. The overwhelming increase in traffic will tear apart the fabric of a neighborhood of narrow streets with no sidewalks. a neighborhood of modest homes where young families move to have and raise kids. There are many young children in this neighborhood. They're currently allowed to play in the streets because the neighborhood is an enclave with no through traffic. Certainly these outdoor activities of children will not continue when persons in a hurry to get to work from the condo complex are racing through the neighborhood or are in a hurry to get home. Children of school age will have to walk on streets with no sidewalks to catch a school bus on the post road in the midst of commuters from the condos who will be in a hurry. You're going to degrade the lifestyle of one of Fairfield's more modest neighborhoods in order to build luxury condos. That does not seem consistent with harmonizing with an existing neighborhood. I wonder what the impact of property values will be on the modest starter homes when the enclave status of this neighborhood is destroyed. The proposed development is attractive and dangles significant tax revenue and other emoluments, but I hope you will balance those positive aspects against the less desirable implications of this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard?
She was reacting to the meeting, signaling.
My name is Russell Jennings. I live at 525 Winnipogue Drive in Fairfield. When I drive from my home to the senior center, I take the post road through numerous traffic lights in the center of town to Ruane Street just to avoid the Mill Plain Post Road intersection. Non-rush hour traffic at that intersection often wait through 3 or 4 light cycles to get from Mill Plain Road to the Post Road. When I was young, I lived on Bungalow Avenue. At the time, what we called the Aluminum Company Foundry operated on the site we now know as the former Exide Battery Company. The Aluminum Company used to truck their dead sand down Granville Street and dump it into the salt marsh. This was oil-soaked sand laced with who knows what toxin contaminants that we as kids used to ride our bikes on, play war in the black, lifeless, plantless desert. This is a foundry shovel my brother found and brought home. The developers planned rain gardens and screen plantings as an environmental benefit to the site. Now, how much of those buried contaminants will then leach into the healthy salt marsh? Would the plants react negatively to the salt air or the saline flooding? Capping or removing those contaminants seems like a better idea. The London Square-inspired design of the proposed condos, while fine for a city setting, is out of place, situated in between single-family neighborhood homes and a natural open salt marsh. London Square architecture is no more appropriate on a salt marsh than beach cottage-inspired designs would be for metropolitan London. In the developer's presentation, it was implied that this would appeal to empty nesters waiting to downsize their dwellings. Why then are there more 3-bedroom units than single or 2-bedroom units? Why would anyone leave all that empty space here while enjoying winters in Florida? Should we create a living space through a zoning change in a known flood-prone area? We know a devastating storm will come one day. We should encourage families to avoid vulnerable sites near the shore. In my 13 years in the Flood and Erosion Control Board, I learned that severe inland rainstorms can back up high floodwaters behind the self-regulating tide gates. And the tide gates won't open until the low tide allows the water to flow to the sound. And sometimes that water is higher than it would have been if there were no tide gates. Perhaps people could find Mr. Sinto's condos in Shelton or follow Mr. Fallon's friends to Ansonia or Oxford rather than choose this site. When the storm does come, 58 condo owners will be faced with cleanup and repairs while Mr. Sinto's profits will be safe in a bank. Mr. Fallon opines that if we don't change the zone to designed residential, a business will be reestablished on the site. The town has gone to great expense to protect the existing infrastructure at the sewage treatment plant and other facilities from coastal storms. What company would want to incur the same expenses at a site similarly at risk to flooding? If a flood or fire should threaten this proposed development, I can see Fairfield Center Fire and Rescue racing down narrow Thorpe Street and Southport Station units entering via Granville Street, while some 100 cars are trying to exit the in-building protected parking. The access roads are barely adequate for current traffic. The professional studies show that Mill Plain Road, Post Road, Carter Henry Drive intersection is an egregious traffic stress point. Merely admitting that fact should not give us permission to make it worse. I respectfully ask that you deny this application.
Thank you very much. It is a nice shovel.
Hi, my name is Donovan Romali from 98 Granville
What's
Street.
your last name?
Romali. So, I mean, obviously some good points were made. You guys are very knowledgeable, so I'm not going to take you through the looking glass, but I just wanted to kind of lodge some of my concerns. So, I mean, effectively, we do like the fact that the project is reaching out to meet those environmental goals. We like the fact that it is trying to kind of hold out that olive branch to the neighborhood a little bit with that public path. But I think one of the things that really concerns me and many here is based off of that density, just the fact that considering the number of units, it is more than double the amount of units in our entire little microcosm. So obviously there's a lot of consternation behind that. So when I was looking at the plans last week, which was the first opportunity that I got to look at the new plans, I just noticed that, you know, the lot is very weighted towards Granville. We're talking about traffic studies with Thorpe Street being very narrow. So given the opportunity to drive across a lot down a very narrow street in order to wait at a 5 points intersection for a light, they're just going to go zipping down Granville Street to a stop sign. And currently, when that gets backed up, the only way to get out is to nose out and kind of push your way through traffic. So that is statistically going to be happening much more frequently. So all of this just kind of raises those concerns, especially at that intersection and traffic coming through the neighborhood. So I just ask that you keep these things in mind when you're making your decision, and even for any mitigating circumstances for the neighborhood, to just keep those in mind, including any ideas for signage or anything to just really alleviate that intersection should you decide to do something with this project. So thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir.
Good evening, board members. My name is John Angel. I reside at 196 Cobblers Hill Road, Fairfield. I'm the founder of Angel Commercial LLC, a Fairfield-based commercial real estate firm. As the exclusive real estate representative of the subject property for the past dozen years, I've had a first-hand view of both the changes in the economic landscape in town, for better and worse, and the changes specific to this site and the application before you. In an effort to bring clarity to what has been brought before the board and the audience tonight, as well as previous meetings, there are a few worthy items to mention.
So, and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
but I just want to be clear for the record.
Yes.
Are you here representing the applicant, or did you represent?
I'm speaking on behalf of the seller of the site,
On behalf of the seller?
I'm speaking as a public person.
That's okay. Here in
So-
your capacity as a resident of the town of
Correct.
Fairfield, but you also represent
Correct.
the seller in the
Full
transaction?
disclosure, I list and represent the seller of the
Okay.
property.
Very good. Thank you.
It's easy to forget the historical use at the site, since it's been vastly underutilized for the last decade. For more than 80 years, this site has been home to industrial users as permitted by the current zoning regulations. First Fairfield Lumber, then McClinch Equipment, and most recently United Rentals, which, as the #1 branch nationally serving the New York City market for the high lift and crane divisions, brought truck traffic exceeding 90 trips daily down Thorpe Street. Let me say that again, 90 trips daily down Thorpe Street as permitted by the zoning regulations. I can assure you that if an industrial occupant was present today, the majority of the audience would feel differently about the proposed residential project. The current condition of the premises is not due to the neglect of the owner, but rather from 3 area kids who committed arson. So to suggest that the owner has ignored the premises is simply false. The fact is, the actions of those kids have created a financial hardship for my client since the Town of Fairfield Blight Commission has been fining the entity and has required compliance at great expense. Additionally, the developer applicant at this moment has agreed to clean up the problems of the past, which he had no involvement in creating, and that's namely the remediation of the environmentally tainted property bordering the wetlands. As we progress as a town, it's important to have strategic vision and to recognize that change is necessary to avoid falling behind. Everyone is aware that the town faces a shortfall in tax revenues due in part to the loss of GE, and as a community, we need to figure out how to offset that. The applicant is proposing a responsible project that is not only architecturally pleasing, but will increase the tax revenue tenfold. Tenfold. As far as a residential development, the application also helps fill 2 voids. Firstly, 10% of the units will be reserved for affordable housing, helping the town reach its requirements under state mandate 830G. Secondly, it helps fill the void of new housing for residents that wish to downsize and remain in town. The market has shown that the audience of buyers in recent years has gravitated to in-town living. Not only is this property a short walk from the train station, but also local shops, restaurants, and service businesses downtown that need the support to thrive. And a vibrant downtown benefits everyone. In the real estate industry, professionals frequently focus on establishing what is considered to be the highest and best use for a property. In this case, the applicant has a rare opportunity, and that is to seek an approval to convert an underutilized, unattractive industrial site to an aesthetically pleasing, appropriately sized housing development that mutually benefits the residents and the town by offering a new development that fills the void for in-town living and adding to the tax base. John Fallon has pointed out how the team of professionals engaged by the applicant have addressed several concerns of the past by taking those concerns into consideration when positioning the planned structures away from the neighboring homes, while still delivering a first-class finished product. I respectfully implore this board to embrace this opportunity by approving the project, which has been a long time coming and is truly in the best interest of the town. Thank you for your consideration, and I have copies of these for your board.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard on this? Hi there. Did you speak
Hi,
last
I'm
week?
Janice Pamazzi, 124 3rd Street, right next to the project. And I'm hard of hearing, and so I have another, just a few more suggestions in my mind that I'll give the board.
Okay.
And I know I showed this to you last week.
You did.
And I know it's not very good. I know it's not very good, but I just wanted to show you how congested the little area is, coming and going and going and coming.
Okay.
That's one of my focuses. And please, I beg you, so when you're thinking about it, drop the 58 and go down to 21 units. It'll make it less traffic, less problem, less water. Thank you.
Very good.
Bye.
Thank you. Saw someone over here, someone over here.
Fred Figler, 86 Granville Street. I'd like to ask a few questions about this project. The reason for opening up Granville Street. What is the code that this project has to have two access? What's the reasoning? Is there a code that definitely you have to have an entrance and an exit, or is...
So this is an opportunity for public comment and for you to submit anything you'd like to submit to us to consider. It's not
Well, I'd just like to...
question and answer session.
Well, I'd like
I
to
apologize.
point out that there are units in Fairfield that only have one entrance and exit, like the Salt Meadows, Pine Ridge, the Ledge, the Audubon, Southport Woods. They only have one way in, one way out, and that's the same road. As far as traffic, my wife and I were here last week, and we listened to it, report. Wednesday morning, we were having coffee, like 9:30 in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table, decided to count traffic. From 9:30 to 12:30, there were 55 cars or trucks that went up and down the street. That's not counting sitting there for the full time. That's, you know, getting up, going, doing something. Then in the afternoon, from 2:30 to 4:30, there are 34 cars or trucks using this road. As far as opening that up, come snow time, the plows, they push the snow down Granville Street, right at the end, right where this proposed road's supposed to go. There's going to be more snow on our street, more shoveling to do, more heart attacks. Hopefully not. As far as the walk is concerned, is this going to be accessible? Can we go through this property? Or do we have to go at the beginning or the end, as far as the residents in this area? Can we cut through? Or is this going to be restricted, that we have to go to point A, point B, to use this path?
So like I said, it's not generally a question and answer here. This is a public...
Okay, I just want to...
The road will be open. The applicant said it's not gated. There's a public path, and there are pathways, which will be accessible to everyone.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Jim Morley, Thorpe Street, Fairfield. I'd just like to repeat what's been said already. Thorpe Street is a busy, crowded street that's, and for all practical purposes, is a one-way street. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, Eve Healy, 155 Granville. I just wanted to add a couple more comments that I forgot about last week. Should this project go through and trucks start to go through, I would like the commission to consider that work starts no earlier than 7 o'clock and is done by 6 o'clock. Monday through Friday, not on Saturday or Sunday. I also wanted to talk about the traffic study a little bit more. I believe the traffic study was done in February or March. Well, please note the seasonality of traffic. So as May and June approach, traffic in Fairfield gets a lot busier. The roads are a lot more jammed. There's a lot of road construction. You have teen drivers out. You have all the college students out. So that just makes getting in and out of Granville Street all that much more difficult. And I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard on this? Okay, going once. Okay.
Good evening.
You spoke also last week?
Excuse me?
Go ahead, sir.
I didn't hear what you said.
Did you speak also last week?
No, I was not here last week.
Excellent. Okay.
But if you recognize my face, thank you. Steve Pomazzi, 124th Thorpe Street. I'm a little concerned about our parking. We're right at the entrance to the proposed project, and I don't quite understand the public walkway around the built-up berm, where those people are going to park their cars if it's open to the public to use the walkway, and the walkway comes out on the top near our house. So I would like some consideration made for some kind of parking. As it is right now, we have a very difficult time with people parking in our parking lot, and our tenants have to call the police department quite a bit. What's going to happen when the general public wants to walk around the walkway? Also, the berm that they're proposed to build is going to push the floodwater over onto the corner of Thorpe Street instead of into the high water mark. It's like forcing the water to go around their project and forcing it onto the corner of Thorpe Street. I don't know what it does at the other end. And I see how high the water comes up on the floods. They used to have a high water mark on the post road there by Mr. Green's, but somebody has taken it down. I don't know how long ago they did it, but the high water mark is not clearly noted any place on that street in a flood zone to tell the people where it is. I don't know if that's FEMA's job or that's the town's job. I just wanted to make a notation of that. So those are my concerns about that and the traffic. I really feel a project of this size, which I think it should only be like 21 units and not the number that they're asking, they should open all of the roads and not put hardships on just 2 roads. If the town's going to approve it, so all the roads tie into it and let the access go to the other roads instead of just 2 roads. It's just too much traffic. Thorpe Street is a very tough street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Anyone? Okay. Mr. Fallon, rebuttal?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, on behalf of Mr. Cinto and our entire team, I want to thank you for your time and attention and volunteer service with regard to the review of this application. I think that probably, in terms of summarizing in a cohesive and expedited fashion, a good starting point is Mr. Reber's comments of this evening, because they do subsume a number of comments that people have brought up. So I'll use that as a touch plate, and hopefully we'll cover everybody's points. First of all, in terms of Mr. Reber, I appreciate his kind words and the time he spent with me with regard to our discussions, which were very constructive and pleasant in terms of trying to reach some accommodations in terms of conditions of approval. You've received Mr. Reber's conditions of approval that are dated April 20, 2017. I can tell you that with one adjustment, the applicant is accepting of those as conditions of approval, as stated, as he did not take up your time to read them. I will not either. The only thing we'd ask for some consideration on is the third point, which is the inspection of foundations precedent to any pile driving that would be done. We are certainly not opposed to that, and we had intended to do that as a matter of self-protection in any event. But in talking with, for example, Mr. LaFosse, who is here, our geotechnical consultant, he advises that in a situation like this, where all pile driving will be some 120 to 140 feet from any property lines, that what would be prudent would be to do a foundation survey of abutting properties and maybe 50 feet out from the property line. Having said that, we'd suggest to you 100 feet. We think that's prudent. But 500 feet would be clearly excessive and not necessary. So the only thing we'd ask you to consider is modifying that perimeter that Mr. Reber suggests to 100 feet.
So let me understand this then. The inspections that we're talking about would be of
Foundations.
the foundations in the homes.
Yeah.
So that would mean that an expert employed by the applicant developer would make arrangements with the residents to come in and inspect the foundations, and then you would have a report prepared that not only you'd keep for your files, but you'd also supply a copy of that to that homeowner.
Correct.
As well, yeah?
Same protocols as a pre-blast survey, but these are pre-pile driving surveys. And we're in total agreement with that, provided we ask your consideration that the perimeter
500.
of 100 feet is excessive according to our expert, but 500 feet would be...
But 100 feet is
acceptable.
acceptable to the applicant,
Correct.
right? And I'd just
Correct.
like to make it clear for the record and for the members of the public listening and here, that is at no cost to the residents.
Oh, correct.
Right?
And it's protective of both the residents, and frankly, it's protective of ourselves. As Mr. Reber pointed out, we did submit an affordability plan. It does include, pursuant to my discussions with him, provision for one of the units, affordable units, being ADA compliant, and it does incorporate the provisions recommended by the Affordable Housing Committee. Let me talk a little bit about some of his other comments. With regard to the affordability plan, the plan has been submitted. Section 13.14.7 requires that a proposal such as this shall be accompanied by. Well, it has been. There is no lateness with regard to this plan. It is part of the public record. It has been submitted. I appreciate Mr. Reber's comments tonight, wherein he said, I think the affordability plan Attorney Fallon submitted is beyond adequate and is an exemplary affordability plan that I hope others will emulate in the future. The simple fact of the matter is the affordability plan is part of your record. It's a good plan. It complies with all provisions of the Affordable Housing Committee's recommendations, and there's clearly no basis to suggest that this hearing should in any way be left open because an exemplary affordability plan has been submitted. Let's talk a little bit about property values. This property is zoned heavy industrial. It's environmentally contaminated. It has no stormwater controls whatsoever. The property is in blighted condition, and you heard testimony at the last hearing from Mr. Delco with regard to his desire to sell his property and the impacts that the property and its condition were having on him. You also know that under Connecticut law, you are entitled to bring your own experience, judgment, and knowledge in making your decision. And it's self-evident, ladies and gentlemen, that property values in the area can only be benefited by the approval of this application when you take into consideration its current industrial zoning, its environmental contamination, its lack of stormwater management, and its blighted condition. The fence, which is another matter that Jan mentioned, we have submitted a detail with regard to the fence. It's a stockade fence, and certainly if the commission feels some other material is appropriate, we're happy to address that. But suffice it to say that the record of this hearing is certainly complete, and there's no reason for the hearing not to close this evening.
So, Attorney Fallon, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to. If you you wouldn't have a problem if we suggested a vinyl fence, white vinyl fence?
Not at all.
Okay.
There's a number of comments that Mr. Reber made that also coincide with the letter you received from Ms. Braun, so I'll address those directly. First of all, there is the matter of the text amendment. Let me reiterate what I said at the hearing last week. The granting of the amendment will not deprive this commission of its authority and discretion to review individual requests for development that will also involve industrially zoned property, because an application for change of zone and special permit will be required for such an application. You know very well that you have the greatest discretion as a matter of law when you act on a zone change. You also know that you have standards in your special permit regulations that make it important for you to look on a case-by-case basis at the matter of traffic impacts. Indeed, as Ms. Braun's letter points out, there is already precedent in your regulations for an amendment involving collector road provisions, as this one is. That would be with regard to the transit-oriented development district, as well as the Pine Tree housing development. But if you determine, as we hope you will, to grant this amendment, as you've done in those other two instances, it will do nothing to in any way dilute your authority and your discretion when you're faced with an application such as this. You can certainly, if you choose to, limit its implications further. That's within your discretion, and it's properly within the call of this particular hearing.
Meaning that we could adopt a more narrow amendment, or an amendment which includes additional restrictions that would serve to reduce the impact of the amendment on other parcels.
Correct, if you choose to do so. And I'm not trying to dissuade you from doing that. I am saying, in addition to that, however, at the end of the day, between a need for a zone change for any subsequent application and the need for a special permit, your discretion will be unencumbered.
Until you come before us.
Pardon?
Until you come before us.
No, you can mark my words. This is on tape, and it isn't. Because, no, truly, you know, one thing, there is no precedent in zoning of any kind. Every matter has to be looked at as a case-by-case basis. And that is absolutely overwhelmingly true when you're talking about zone changes. One other thing that Ms. Braun mentioned was somehow some implication that this should be subject to a separate public hearing. Hey, listen, the application for the text amendment was properly noticed pursuant to the provisions of both state statute and your regulations, so it's totally appropriate. Both she and Mr. Reber asked the question, well, what is different about this application? Why did you reach one conclusion in 2013 and now perhaps reach another one tonight? I covered that the last time, but I'll briefly state it again. 58 units versus 65, inclusion of 6 affordable units, now 1 ADA compliant. We took the buildings, we moved them away from the property line. We've made provision for a full secondary point of ingress and egress, which I'll address further in a minute, as always preferred by the police and fire department. We've made provision for a DEEP approved to all DEP standards, remediation of not only the site, but the adjacent town property. We're going to replace the sewer on our property. We're going to give $100,000 to the town to defray the cost for the off-site sewer work, more porous pavement, improvements to the timing of the intersection lighting, and as I said before, Mr. Cinto's involvement in this project with his track record and roots in the community. So that's the text amendment. Mr. Reber indicates, and other people have indicated, Thorpe Street, it's inadequate for the proposed use. That's simply not true. You have testimony and a report from Mr. Galante that clearly indicate that we will not have any adverse impact on the existing condition at the Mill Plain Post Road intersection. Thorpe Street is what it is. The Mill Plain Post Road intersection, though improved because of the timing issues, is what it is. But so is what it is 0.7 acres of, in my mind, aberrationally zoned industrial property adjacent to a lovely residential area and our center design business district. And that's the reality we face. And there is nothing in this record that would indicate that what we propose from the standpoint of traffic is going to have any exacerbating or adverse impact with regard to traffic. Both Mr. Reber and Ms. Braun reference consistency with the town plan of conservation and development. Again, I don't want to be redundant about that, but I cited at the last hearing numerous pertinent examples of goals and policies within the town plan of conservation and development which are directly supportive of this application. Creation of a transitional zone for multifamily housing to stem the spread of business uses into residential neighborhoods. Housing developments may be an appropriate alternative in the area between the turnpike and the railroad. Additional housing opportunities in the center should be encouraged through existing mixed-use provisions of the zoning regulations. Housing opportunities for people of all ages, creeds, incomes, and physical disabilities. Diversification of housing accommodations. Utilization of the design residence district as a transition from commercial uses to single-family zones. So I think it is very different, and very difficult, I should say, to justify any finding that what we propose here in terms of the text amendment and the zone change are not supported by various provisions of the town plan of conservation and development. Let's talk a little bit about traffic, a little more about traffic. You heard testimony both tonight and at the last hearing with regard to Granville Street. Again, I ask you to look at the reality here. The documentation contained in Mr. Galanti's report confirms that the opening of Granville Street for purposes of this development will lead to 8 additional trips, vehicular trips, on Granville Street during both the morning and the evening peak hour. 8 trips. That's 1 additional car every 7.5 minutes. That is not going to have an adverse effect or change the quality or nature of that street. I question, as a father and a grandfather, whether children should be playing in a street, but we recognize children bicycle in streets. We recognize this is a residential neighborhood with children, but we're talking about for 2 hours a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, or in the afternoon, an addition of 1 vehicle every 7.5 minutes. To me, that does not appear to be in any way changing the character of the neighborhood or creating an issue with regard to public health and safety. With regard to Thorpe Street, you heard testimony from Mr. Angel tonight, where in its full-blown operations, not that long ago, when United Rental was in charge, you were seeing upwards of 90 trucks a day coming up and down Thorpe Street. When you look at, again, the traffic report, what you find here is that our traffic will have no impact or exacerbate existing conditions as they currently exist at that Thorpe Street, Post Road, Mill Plain Road intersection. Mr. Reber, in his remarks, mentions harmonization, and he calls your attention, he mentions Sunrise. We all sat through Sunrise. I'm waiting for another hearing. Sunrise was about enhancements pursuant to the Commission's request to the landscaping plan. It also was about a special exception use in a residential zone. It's apples and oranges to compare that to this request to end what I again think is an aberrational at this point in our history zoning of industrial zone property at this location. And he refers respectfully I say this, to the overwhelming increase in traffic. There's not any support in this record for this development resulting in an overwhelming increase in traffic anywhere. Not on Granville, not on Thorpe, not at the intersection of Mill Plain and the Post Road. And Mr. Reber concludes with indicating that approval of this application is going to, quote, degrade the lifestyle of this neighborhood. Really, Jan? Environmental pollution on your doorstep. Blighted property within your immediate view. Prospects for future heavy industrial use resuming on an unclean site, still environmentally tainted, and we're going to degrade the lifestyle of the neighborhood? Look, the other thing I say, and I say it carefully, zoning is not a plebiscite. It's not a matter of who turns in the most positions or who wears the most T-shirts to the hearings. But it is instructive, I think, for those of us who've lived with this property for 5 or 6 years, to recall where we all were 4 or 5 years ago in this room, where by my recollections, hundreds, over 150 people showed up. That's not happened here. And I think the reason it hasn't happened here is because a local developer with the kind of sensitivity to the community he lives in took the steps, did the things that I talked about before, to make the development more sensitive to the neighborhood and more sensitive to the needs of the town in terms of everything from the sewers to cleaning up the town property. So, in the final analysis, you're left, I think, with a very important planning decision. The decision that you need to make is very important to the future of this piece of property, of this neighborhood, of the downtown center, of our town as a whole. But I leave you with the thought that the classification of this industrially zoned parcel adjacent to a single-family residential neighborhood and the downtown center is not appropriate in terms of where we should be and where we want to go. And that the establishment of London Square under the vision and leadership of Mr. Cinto is going to provide, in accordance with all those things I've mentioned relating to the town plan of conservation and development, a very appropriate and beneficial transition between the existing downtown commercial district and the adjacent residential neighborhood. It's going to ensure an upgrade of the zoning of the property that's going to eliminate the adverse impact of future intense industrial uses. It's going to ensure that we will have an adjacent downtown and residential zone that are transitionally in harmony. It will provide for significant environmental improvements to the property, reducing impervious area, having positive impacts on water quality that's now non-existent, and addressing an intense plan for restoration of the tidal marsh area, and providing for an attractive and meaningful public access, linking the downtown business district to the residential neighborhoods. And we're going to accomplish all this by providing a diversity in our housing inventory, including 6 affordable units, and the type of homes and residences that so many Fairfielders who want to stay in Fairfield are looking for and can't find. So it is truly a win-win-win situation for all concerned. We hope that in your review, you will see fit to approve the application, and we do very much appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you. Commissioner Kennelly.
Thanks very much. Thank you for that excellent presentation, as always, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, sir.
And for the, the willingness of the applicant to take part in the process. One question. I wanted to get an understanding, and this isn't directly involved in our zoning, but I want to understand the challenge of the site for development.
Yes.
So I wondered if in the course of all the experts who are working on behalf of Mr. Cinto's application, whether or not the costs of what is expected in terms of the environmental remediation have been worked out, and what those would be separate and apart from the acquisition costs of the land. My understanding, the land is about $2 million for the land, $1.8 million for the improvements, so a total somewhere in that range. I'm just trying to understand, what is the bar here in terms of cleaning this up to residential standard for a private developer? What are we looking at there? Because you're right, this is a historic decision about what we do with this piece of property downtown. So what are some of those estimates that are factored into the need for, as you described, we can't go any smaller. There's too much investment here.
Right.
What are we talking about in terms of dollars separate and apart from the potential purchase price to remediate?
We don't conclusively know until we do the remediation.
Is there a range? I mean,
Yeah,
you'd have to go
I
in
think-
with some idea. You want to,
Yeah, I think the range that we could be looking at for the remediation, and inclusive
Right.
of the town property,
Right. About $500,000? Sorry. Please, Mr. Cinto, if you could.
Yeah.
Tearing down the building, there's some asbestos in the building.
Right.
So that's not terrible. We have an estimate of $15,000 to $25,000 for that.
Right.
Okay? And we're carrying about $500,000 for the cleanup.
That's the anticipated amount you imagine that the 6-acre site will require?
Just on the land.
On the land?
On the land.
And then about another 20 for
And
the
then-
asbestos?
Right, and then going into the town land.
Right.
Which is separate, that, we're carrying about $500,000 there.
And that's only 0.85 acres, but
Yeah.
because it's next to the water, I guess
Yeah,
that makes it much more expensive?
We have to take it out and,
So the top number you're looking at is approximately, maybe close to $1 million in terms of investment in the land itself to do remediation, for your estimates to figure out how you can make this work.
Right.
That's one, thank
But
you.
that, one thing too,
No,
that
sure.
doesn't take into consideration the other extraordinary expense here, and that is the geotechnical issues and the surcharging and the fill and so on and so forth. That's a very large number as well.
After we do the cleanup, then we have to bring fill and put it on top of the land.
Right.
And then we have to let it sit there for 6 months. And then we have to take the fill away.
And that's to get it to the residential standard?
It is so that you compact the
To
land.
compact the land, oh, I see.
Compact the land,
So
so
that
where
just
you,
adds
put
weight.
the sidewalks, where you put the buildings, you're not gonna have any problems, because the buildings are gonna be sitting on piles, so nothing's gonna happen to the buildings. But all the sidewalks around the buildings, we have to compress that land, so when we put the sidewalks in, it doesn't shrink on us, it doesn't sit on us.
So for a site that, is 6 acres, I mean, again, I'm going to ask you to the penny or something, but as you kind of have a back of the envelope.
It's probably another $500,000.
Another
just
$500,000.
to do that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you giving us. And again, I know that's out of the usual
developer.
scope, but it helps us as we kind of consider this broadly. Thank
I
you.
mean, I think the anticipation from the experts here is it could be double that amount. And that, again, is maintaining, hoping you don't find any surprises. But to follow up on that, and as far as the conclusion goes, everybody wants this site to work. If this site could be cleaned up, remediated, and a builder could turn a profit, taking into consideration the environmental issues, the geotechnical issues, and build and make a reasonable builder's profit, and build less units, that would have happened. That would have happened 4 years ago, what happened 3 years ago. A lot of people have looked at this project. And I can tell you this, the only one who said, yeah, I can make this work at 58 units was Mr. Cinto. Because whenever most people took a look at the remediation issues and the geotechnical issues and factored in costs, they walked away. That's why I think this is such an extraordinary opportunity. And it's not, with all due respect to everybody, it's not some developer out of Pennsylvania or Illinois or New York. It's Bob Cinto, who lives here, who knows that site, and who's going to be accountable to this town, this neighborhood, and this commission. So we hope you will take advantage of what I really do believe is a great opportunity for a final and very positive resolution of this difficult but very important piece of property. Thank you.
Two quick minor questions, if I can.
Commissioner Noonan.
Regarding the suggested conditions of approval, the second one, limited hours for pile driving, no early starts. Do you have an idea of what time range you would look at? 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. For pile driving. How about the same for work, or?
We do have, so the pile driving, your question's answered.
7 to
That's
6.
Monday through Friday, 7 to 6. As far as general construction, we do have a town noise ordinance, and that does preclude activities between certain times. Would you be planning to work on Sunday? No, okay, so beyond
That's fine.
that.
I just, instead of guessing, want to ask you.
Good?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you all.
We'll close the public hearing on this item, and we'll take a 5-minute recess before we
Yeah, I figured,
hear the
but
next application.
instead of guessing.
Rizio for review of revised plans for consistency with a previously approved special permit for 16-unit residential development in the Design Residence District.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Raymond Rizzio, here before you tonight representing Love Where You Live Homes with regard, or Westway Road LLC with regard to this application for a modification of a previously approved plan. You need me to wait for Commissioner Kennelly?
Commissioner Kennelly had to adjourn himself for a few minutes, so apologize. I'm sure he'll watch the tape.
One of the things is going to trying to keep this simple because I'm probably a better listener than I am a talker, and I got to listen to Jim's presentation a couple months ago explaining the difference in the modifications, and then also listen to this commission and what their concerns were and some of the things they wanted to address to make sure there's not been any significant changes from what was approved back in 2006 and to today. So if for anybody who wasn't here last time, and I'll try to be brief because you've had a long hearing, this is an application that was previously approved back in 2006. This was a 16-unit, 5-building unit project. All the units were over 5,000 square feet. This was on Westway Road, and it was 16 high-end units. The project then was stalled with financial crisis and other financial concerns. It ended up being taken care of by a bank. The approvals continued to get extended. At one point in time, there was a problem with the extensions. The case went to court. Everything was finally resolved, and this commission agreed on a stipulation to extend that special permit pursuant to a stipulation that was granted in April of 2016. Property was then sold. Our client looked at the project, felt that it really wasn't in keeping. It was maybe a nice project in 2006, but the size, the density, the intensity of the use, he thought this project was more inclined to have a smaller units, not super small. I mean, they're going to be 3-bedroom units like before, but the units, instead of being 5,700 square feet, will be about 3,500 square feet, 3,000 on 2 floors, and a ground floor that'll have a family room of about 500 square feet. So footprints of about 1,500 square feet. This ended up reducing the amount of impervious that is on the site by about 20%. As you can see, the difference between the two projects. This is our project. We ended up with a pulling back of the impact on the wetlands. The wetlands treated this as a modification, did not require a new application, and treated this as something that was consistent with the previous approval, which is in effect why we're here. As you can remember in the last presentation, I think that Jim did an excellent job, and I can go through it again for you quickly, of the differences between the project, but the commission had a couple of concerns, one with regard to traffic, and 2 with regard to, they want to see the affordability plan, which has been submitted, both the previous plan and our proposed plan. I spoke to Mark Barnhart tonight, who's approved both, and he would like to have some input in those, and as I explained to Jim, he left a message with me that it would be, he'd find it perfectly acceptable for the commission to make it contingent upon approval by the town attorney. I think, as you just heard from Attorney Fallon on these affordable plans, one of the requirements is that just that it be submitted, but that
once again, a contingency of, or a condition of subject to approval of either your town planner or your town attorney would certainly be an acceptable condition for here so that we can move on with the project. There was, in fact, part of the stipulated judgment was the affordability plan was attached. I think you all have, and Jim, we've given copies of the old affordability plan and the stipulated judgment. If not, I bought the affordability plan that was attached to the stipulated judgment if you want me to give those. But I thought we handed them in before. If we didn't, I can hand them in again now. Just one page.
No, thank you very much for that. Yeah.
So in other words, when you read the stipulated judgment, the stipulated judgment was definitely there.
Yeah.
And it attached to the stipulated judgment, this affordability. It's referenced as an exhibit of stipulation.
Yeah, a requirement that we had at that time was for any modification to come into compliance with the regulations that had been amended, because it had been so long, and one of those amendments was to the affordability plan.
And there were 2 units that, in part of the stipulation, we're also going to put the same 2 units. So the good news about this is a DRD, underlying Residence A. It would be entitled to 6.9 units per acre. We're sticking with the same 16 that is approved. We're not back here asking for 48 units. So what we've done is basically reduce the impervious by 20%. We've pushed back all the setbacks. So this previous application was 33 feet from the road. We're going to be 65 feet from the road. Our combined setbacks are going to be 182 feet. One side setback is going from 30 to 35, and the rear setback is going from 970 feet to 1,075 feet. So everything has been, the amount of disturbance has been greatly reduced. Now, this property runs between, if you know the property on Westway Road, if you're going south, it's on the right-hand side. It exists between the highway and the train tracks. We have very few neighbors, and I think the only neighbors that were there, if I can recall, submitted letters in support of the modifications at the last hearing, which triggered your idea of saying, well, maybe we should just publicize this because we want people to know have the opportunity to be heard on it.
Correct. So a principal purpose of this public hearing is for these plans to have been filed.
Correct.
And for it to have been published and noticed as a public hearing, so that the members of the public could hear you summarize the changes and what you're doing now. And so that there would be an opportunity for them to ask questions of staff and then come in and, either support or, oppose the approval that you're seeking. One of the other questions that we had was whether there was a revised traffic impact study. Terrific. Okay.
We've submitted, I think, to Jim already. It's in your package, and it basically, to summarize, Mr. Galante, because I just saw him leave out the door, but he occasionally lets me stand in as a traffic expert, and he states that there will be no change in the traffic impact between now and when the project was previously approved. And if you think about it, if you've been down this street, this is about as quiet a section of Westway Road as possible, and now you're talking only about 16 units on a residential street. It is...
And not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of the members of the public who are listening and who are here to hear you. Why don't you just, if you can, take a moment to just summarize the findings.
Here's what I will do is basically just read Mr. Galante's summary, which basically says the level of additional site traffic added to Westway Road and other area roadways will have an insignificant, if any, impact on the overall operation of nearby roadways and intersections during any of the peak hours. The level of additional site traffic will not require any mitigation. We do not recommend that the site access drive is controlled with a stop sign and a stop bar. The previously approved sight lines for this driveway should be provided and maintained. We trust this letter will provide sufficient information to the town to consider it. We think it's that basically is a summary of Mike's report, is that he found no impact or adverse impact on traffic. And basically also compared it to what was approved in 2006 and what we're proposing in 2017.
Okay. He recommends a stop bar.
He didn't, no, he said we didn't recommend. He basically says,
initial site trip, we do recommend that site access drives control with a stop sign and stop bar, which we're fine with.
Right, okay. Is that part of the revised plan, or do we need to make that a condition of
We can make that a condition of approval.
a condition, all right? And he notes that the previously approved sightlines don't change because
Correct.
your ingress and egress doesn't change. right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
The other issue was, and I think, Chairman, you mentioned was, typically, when you get a look at a change, or you get a look at approving some kind of residential development, you like to get a feel for what, even though we showed you the elevations and the structures, and I can hand those out to you, is what kind of materials are we going to be dealing with in a type of planned community?
Yeah.
I have, for the smaller, just a handout of what the units are going to look like. All the units will be the same. They'll basically, a first floor that has a two-car garage, and a family room, and a second floor, which is about 1,500 square feet, with the dining area, living room, kitchen, and then third floor with 3 bedrooms. And that's Glenn Tatangelo, who has been working in town for about 30 years. Very well-known builder in the beach area. Love Where You Live Homes has been one of the most successful builders in the beach area over the last 10 years, and Glenn is the one who's the impetus behind this project. And Glenn has brought all the materials that he can just share with you quickly.
Yeah, that would be
What the
helpful.
windows are going to look like, what the stone's going to look like.
That'd be helpful. Do you have any extra copies of those?
Sure.
Maybe just see if anybody out there wants a copy.
I don't know if anybody like a
I don't know
copy.
if anybody needs one.
You want one? I get the information on that one.
Come on, I'm trying to help you
This is it.
advertise here.
Wait, I got a brochure here,
Yeah.
too.
Just do a downsizing project.
There we go. We'll be taking names down, if anybody's interested.
Okay, all right.
Glenn, if you want to come up and take you through the materials, why don't we bring the
No,
boards
that's
up?
good. That's good. That's attractive.
Looks like Carol Merrill. You're dating yourself there. I was coaching basketball. I was coaching basketball. I'm getting that reference. Wow. Basketball team this year, and I started yelling at the kids and saying, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, and they all looked at me like,
A little bit. Yeah. Thank you.
You're right. Nobody knew what a broken record was.
I sound like a skip disc. Oh, no, that's out of date now, too.
Exactly.
They don't skip anymore.
My name is Glenn Tatangelo. I'm a partner with my partner Danielle Bijanata in Love Where You Live Homes. We've built about 50 homes since the last flood in Fairfield, south of the Post Road. We build really nice luxury homes. We've won numerous design awards, even to the point we stopped putting in applications because a lot of our houses were getting awards for all sorts of architectural detail, style, floor plans, and we've been very active in the National Association of Home Builders and the State Home Builders over my 30-year career. As you can see, we will be doing a white cedar shingle style home. It will be, we haven't decided the color yet, but probably be a white or possibly a light gray. We are going to use a special window that's designed for sound reduction. Being next to the highway, big issue. We are doing 2x6 construction with blown-in insulation, so when you're in the units, sound will not be an issue. There's nothing we can do on the outside, but we use a special window that it's a two-pane window, and it also has a film on it that will reduce the window. That, along with the blown-in insulation, will
Yeah, pass it around.
will reduce the sound. Here's a sample of our door style. The goal is to do more of a historic look. We don't want to do anything trendy. We're going after a very historic look to the property. Our background is landscape design. I actually own a tree farm in Vermont, so when we do plantings big. We did a project in Westport right next to the highway, 21 units. We bring in large trees, and it softens the element of the architecture also, which works out well. I also have with me the stone that we're going to be using. Okay. This is a thin set stone, but it's real Fairfield. It's granite. Wow, that's, yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah, pretty in the lower section there.
No, that's about it.
Yeah, it's a nice quality stone, just as good as it brings. Okay, and,
It's legit.
also, we got away from pine or cedar for trim, and we do use an AZAC trim board, which you really, it's a composite material. But it's very expensive, but the good news is, you drive around Southport, you see these beautiful homes, but you also see big maintenance issues. That will, okay, this is the same material as the house. We'll have masonry front steps, heavily landscaped. We build nice homes. We've been built, Jim, you've seen us build over 50 homes in this area, and I don't think you've ever had a complaint from any one of our clients.
We've also submitted a landscape plan done by Bill Kenny. It's significant. It's also nice, one of the things nice about it is it's a very large buffer. We've got a large wetland in the back, so it's also pretty much protected. We really won't cause any negative effect on our neighbors, and there's a couple neighbors across the street that we pushed the buildings back. So this is, all in all, we think a more cohesive building, one that certainly doesn't overpower. The previous project was more of a McMansion style, where you had 5,700 square foot, townhouses, rolling townhouses that basically ate up a good deal of the developable area. And what we've done is we've replaced the impervious area with additional landscaping, reduced the size of the units, not to the point where there's 3,500 square feet is good size, 3-bedroom units, and the type of product that we think that a lot of people would like to use to stay in Southport, walk to the train station, walk to town. Yet the nice thing about it is there's one road in, we don't have any impact on our neighborhoods, and we probably have one of the largest buffer systems that exist in town.
Excellent.
With all that said, it's a very simple finding we're looking for tonight, that these plans are consistent with what was previously approved. So in other words, we're not back before you for the special permit. We would appreciate, you guys were basically calling it to a vote last month until we had the issue of maybe we just need to just flush this out a little bit. We would appreciate if the commission would act on this tonight and find that it was consistent so our client can get going in the spring. But this is, when you talk about a true win-win, this is what this does. Increases the landscaping, decreases the impact, and gets a project that's been stalled for over 10 years up and running hopefully in the next month or so.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Francis.
Is pervious, all these driveways
Excuse me?
are pervious?
The driveways are impervious, but the impervious of the overall property has been reduced by 20%. In other words, as we've shrunk the size of the homes, we managed to add landscaping and reduce the amount of pavement on the site.
But this is all paved, huh?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Well, not all paved, but the paving that exists is impervious.
Yes.
It's not
Correct.
pervious.
And you have, like I said, 16 units over 7 acres.
Right, yeah.
It's
Okay.
pretty conservative.
Commissioner Corcoran.
I was looking at the affordability plan, if
Yes.
it's for rental units.
Well, here's what there is. I'll explain this to you, and I spoke with Jim about this. The affordability plan that was attached to the stipulation was for rental units. We have also submitted an affordability plan for for-sale units. Mark Barnhart reviewed it. We got a text from him, email from him later today saying that he just would like to have some input on the sale and the restrictions. And he also then called me, and I have which I explained to Jim, I have a voicemail from Mark, said that he had no objection to this commission conditioning the approval on the approval of the affordability plan by the town attorney or the planning director. And I think that's kind of what you've
Or
had.
the Affordable Housing Commission, or
Yeah,
Mr. Barnhart.
Correct, that's fine. So all of that has come together pretty quickly, but what would happen anyway is the stipulation that was approved by this commission, which somebody could have gone and just pulled a building permit, was a draft. So in other words, like if we got a zoning approval tonight, all that says is that you have to submit, as Mr. Fallon explained in the previous time, you have to submit the plan, but approval of the plan is one of the conditions and you get your permit. So we have, but to make it specific, we would not object. In fact, we would request that this commission grant it with the condition of approval by the planning, I guess probably the easiest would be through the planning director, and he can get his guidance from
the economic development or the town attorney, either one. But we're pretty, so that draft that I showed you was not our draft, it was what was attached to the stipulation that this commission approved. Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Attorney Rizzo.
Chairman, thank you very much for your time, folks. Thanks for getting us on the agenda quickly, and we really appreciate your efforts.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this? I mean, we marked it because we wanted people to come in and tell us they loved it or they hated it.
Chairman, can I just add one thing, though? Just
You're
for the
done.
commissioners
No,
that weren't
just
here
kidding.
last time, that there were 2 letters in support of the modification.
Thank you for noting that. There were. Yes, we saw that. Those are in our record. Thank you very much. Okay, no members of the public on this item? Very good. I'll close the public hearing and call the next item, 104-116 5th Street, special permit application of Ash Creek Holdings LLC for additions and alterations to an existing industrial building in the Design Industrial District.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm here tonight representing Ash Creek Holdings, LLC. Mr. Steve Crowley, who is the managing member of Ash Creek Holdings, LLC, is here with me tonight. The application involves the properties located at 104 and 116 5th Street in Fairfield. What we propose, and Mr. Pat Rose of Rose Tissot Architects will review with you in a minute, is a modest expansion of a pre-existing structure. The overall proposal, as shown on the architectural plan submitted herewith, is to add 4 dormers and to increase floor space. As you may know, if you've been out to the site, the building is currently obsolete for ability of a garage area to accommodate what are now normal-sized industrial trucks. We're also proposing to construct a 52-foot by 40-foot garage structure, also as shown on the plans. The property is located in the Design Industrial District and has been used for many decades as the location of a contractor's storage yard, as permitted in Section 21.2.3. It was in most recent years used as a contractor's storage yard by Munson Builders. We have a new tenant. It's T. Palmer Landscaping. That will be active and locating at the current location, from their current location in Westport, Connecticut. Before I introduce Pat, just some general housekeeping. On December 1, 2016, the Zoning Board of Appeals unanimously granted an application for variances with respect to Section 21.9 concerning the side and front yard setbacks so as to allow for the modest expansion of this pre-existing non-conforming building. It should be emphasized, however, that the footprint of the current building will be unchanged and that the existing nonconformities with regard to the side and front yard setback are not being increased. We needed the variance because we were going up, but we're not going out. There also was a code enforcement review that was conducted with regard to the application on January 17th of this year. All staff comments with respect to that review have been complied with. And indeed, you have an email from Laura Pooley in Engineering dated March 29, 2017, confirming that her comments have been addressed by the plans that were revised and then submitted to you. So at this time, I'd like to call on Pat Rose of Rose Tissot, who will give you a brief overview of the architectural proposal. Mr. Chairman.
So one of the things I saw from the code enforcement minutes was a request for an estimate of volume traffic to the site and the number of parking spaces. Is that traffic estimates? I didn't see that anywhere.
Well, we can certainly tell you about our tenant. We have our existing tenant has, how many employees?
He has landscape business in Westport.
You just introduce yourself on the record.
I'm Steve Crowley, the owner of the property. The tenant I have is Pete Palmer Landscaping in Westport. They have a nursery and a greenhouse business in Westport with some of their trucks and vehicles. In this facility, we'll have 5 or 6 people, men coming in the morning. It's already fenced in, so they'll pull into the yard, park, and take vehicles and go do their work.
Okay.
And the volume, Mr. Chairman, the prior tenant or owner, I guess, was Munson Builders. We would anticipate that our activity will not be greater and might probably be very much less than what was ongoing at that location for a number of years. We're not proposing to change the use from a contractor's storage yard.
Okay. And the rendering that you have there, is that, you submitting that for the record? Or
Yeah,
you
I'm
have
sure
a
we
copy?
will. I'll let Mr. Rose, I'm sure he's going to speak to it, but
All right.
he'll explain the context of that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Pat?
Good evening, Pat Rose from Rose Tizo and Company, licensed architect in the state of Connecticut, representing Mr. Crowley. What we're proposing to do is to take this current contractor's yard and upgrade it, especially in the rear of the building, in as much as the existing rear building, wood-framed, relatively short, can't store vehicles inside of it very well. So what we're proposing to do is to take that down, this rear building down, and build a new concrete block building above that. Also, what we're proposing to do is to add, there's a second floor in this building, and we're proposing to put dormers on either side to open up that second floor, make it a little larger, more usable, more openness. So what our site plan shows is this 50 by 42 addition to the back of the office portion of the building, right here. And then garage, correct, there's two garage doors.
How big are the bays?
The bays are, there's a 14-foot high door, 12 by 14, so you could put a dump truck, whatever, in there, you know, and store it inside, actually. Then we're putting dormers on either side of this building for the office above. We're creating entrance, there's a sliding gate here, entrance into the yard, parking being allocated for 11 cars, dumpster location here to the rear. There's an existing shed that's going to remain as it is, and then there's an exit out, separate gate, gate here going onto Fifth Street.
What's on the first floor to the front of the building?
First floor here is office space.
And you put more office space on the second floor.
They're enlarging the office space that's there on the second floor.
So how many square feet of office space you gonna have?
You got about 1,500 square feet on the first floor, and you'll end up with about another 800.
On the first sheet, there are the trees that are shown, without the parking stripes.
Correct, there are some
Second
trees
page.
that are back here.
So, these are the trees that you're proposing on the lot?
No, these were trees that existed on the lot. This is an existing survey. They have since been taken down. They're not there. Actually, the trees in here are not there anymore. Actually, some of these trees are right on top of the property line.
So I didn't see any plan for shade, for the landscaping, the shade trees in the parking lot. I don't see that in the materials.
Correct. There are no new shade trees being added to the parking lot. We are relocating some of the trees that are out along the street in order for us to put our driveway curb cuts, and then we're moving trees here and here. There are existing trees in the front of the building by the office space.
So how does the plan comply with our shade tree requirement for parking lots?
I can answer that if you.
Okay.
The shade tree, the number of spaces to kick in begins at 20 spaces, so this
Okay.
this
So it's
falls
exempt.
below that.
We're allowed,
Falls
yeah.
below that
All right,
number of
that's a
space
simple
threshold.
answer. It's
Yep.
exempt.
And I also, Mr. Chairman, just on that point, you'll note in the code notes, Jeff Minder, our tree warden, did attend. He did, as part of the code matter, follow up with them.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to accommodate the recommendations of the engineering department with regard to improving ingress and egress.
Yeah.
And as Pat mentioned, we had to move some trees, but the tree warden has been a party since the code meeting to the evolution of this plan.
Yeah, no, interesting. And in his code minutes, he says every 10 parking spaces requires one shade tree in the parking lot.
That's what I thought.
Okay, but
we did,
the minimum.
We did accommodate the relocation of those trees.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
That's a question about the color.
Yeah, Commissioner Kennelly?
Mr. Rose, the color on the rendering, is it, I can't quite make it out. Is it?
It's mauve.
Is it? Yeah, no. What? But it's like a green, and then are the various? I should go down, and I will try to get down to Johnson Street.
It's
and
not,
get on-
it's more of an off-white.
It's like an off-white? It
Yeah,
just looks
correct.
green in
It's
this
probably just the
light.
printing of the
Yeah,
rendering,
okay.
which has been hanging around.
Is it all one?
since
I was
a while.
just curious. Is it all one color? Is everything all one color? And are the doors metal colored? How does? I mean, I'm just about the aesthetic.
Correct. I mean, this is going to be concrete block.
Concrete block.
On the outside, there'll be metal-colored doors, which will be off-white, which should be a
But this other
complementary color.
detailing and stuff, like on the you're gonna for those dormers, that's gonna be
Yeah.
actually part of the design.
Correct.
Okay.
It's similar to the detailing that's on the existing office
Right.
building
Right. But
as
so
it
you're gonna
is.
carry that upstairs.
Correct. Okay. So just to quickly go through the architectural plans, this is the rear portion that's coming down and existing. This is the existing office space on the first floor. Then there's some office space on this second floor, which is, you've got the eaves here, which really isn't, it's not a useful space at all on the edges. So what we are proposing to do, because of that, this is the existing building as it is, that space will remain. What we're proposing to do is create dormer here, that allows us to have this window out this way, so we end up with a cross on the second floor. Office space remains, and then this becomes the addition in the back, 2 large garage bay doors, a door in here and here. So it's pretty simple for usability by a contractor. The elevations, which are similar to what we have here. It's very straightforward using the concrete
Very-
block.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I got a question for Attorney Fallon. Attorney Fallon, are we looking at a lease, sublease still here? We're looking at one tenant? Yeah? I know, it just seems like 2,300 square feet of office space for a landscaping company is...
No, it's not, well, Mr. Munson, the Munsons had 1,500, so
Right.
it's,
Yeah, big builders, a lot of people in their office, yeah, okay.
But we do, but no, it's one, single tenant, the lease is in place.
Okay.
No improvements obviously will be commenced unless or until you approve this, but the lease is T. Palmer Landscaping. The other thing I want to just quickly point out, we did work very collaboratively with the zoning staff, Mr. Demonchek and Laura Pooley, to really, I think, make some very real improvements to site circulation here and ingress and egress. And then the last thing I want to say is Mr. Crowley, at the outset, before he actually came to me, he went to all the neighbors, he met with them, he showed them the plans. I don't mean to speak for them, I don't think any of them are here, but it's fair to say they're very excited because, it's a nice thing for their property when they see investment and aesthetic enhancement being made in this industrial neighborhood. So that's really what we have, and we hope you will see fit to approve this. We think it's going to have a good aesthetic impact. It's going to improve the circulation of the property functionally, and it won't really change the use at all in terms of its nature of use or intensity, but it will improve the site and improve the aesthetics.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Fallon? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this? No? Okay, very good. Well, thanks very much. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Next item is 2318 Mill Plain Road, re-subdivision application of Catherine Ross for 3 lots in an A and R3 zone.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Raymond Rizzio. Happy to be before you representing Catherine Ross with regard to this application. Hopefully I'll keep your record time in place and move this along quickly. But this is a pretty straightforward application. This family's been this property is about 5 acres and has been owned by the Ross family for over 100 years. Mrs. Ross is now 92 and has decided she would like to split off 2 lots on Stilson Road and yet maintain the balance of her homestead here for the future. The property split basically between R3 and Residence A. We are developing the 2 RA lots, which are on Stilson Road. The lots need to be 20,000 square feet. They both exceed 20,000 square feet. The lots show all the buildable areas. The lots have the proper sight lines. You'll see there's a lot, try and keep this quick, there's a letter from Laura Pulley
to Jim Lent. I'm not sure if it's in your,
Yep.
but she had written a letter basically as of a few days ago.
March 27th.
Correct.
And
That
one of the
state-
notes that she has there is a recommendation for installing an additional 8-foot section of level lip spreader for different
Correct.
reasons. Are you amenable to that condition of approval?
That's been, it's actually on the plan, but you know what, if you want to make it a condition of approval,
No, if it's in the plan, then it'll be...
it's in the plan.
All right.
Correct.
Very good.
So,
I mean, we'll confirm that.
correct.
Staff, and if that's the case.
Mike,
then
you want
that's the
to
case.
show exactly where it is? Mike Petrillo is here. If you want, I can have him just show you exactly where it is.
Laura's letter,
This is Mike Petrillo for the record, engineer of record.
Laura's letter was in March, and the last revision here was the day after, it's 3/28, and it includes what she asked for, was at least an 8-foot
Yeah.
long level.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So everything's in compliance with your regulations. Everything's been satisfied by the town engineer with regard to site distances. All of it's basically, in this situation, we're acting more in a ministerial capacity. It's not a special permit. If you meet the regulations, basically, the rule is that you, in a subdivision approval, that we request these approvals. There are two interesting things that I would like to recommend that the commission has talked about previously, and I want to explain to, which I think are nuances. Stilson Road, the section, your regulations do not require sidewalks in an R3 zone. We would really do not want to install sidewalks in front of these lots. We understand in an A zone that we would be required to put sidewalks along Stilson Road. The problem is, there is a sidewalk that goes all the way up, let's call it we'll call this just for the north side of Stilson Road, that goes all the way up and follows all the way up, and I have pictures. The problem is over here, there is no sidewalks on this side of the road, and then it's up to Hirsch Road, there are no sidewalks for the houses beyond, so there's no ability to put any connecting sidewalks. And we believe the installation of sidewalks, I might be jumping the gun, but I want to explain to you why I don't think they're appropriate here, even though, because you have the ability to request them in other areas. The problem is here, we think it would create a dangerous condition. Because what would happen is if we had to install sidewalks up this area of Stilson Road, they would stop here, and the only way for somebody to traverse to get to a sidewalk would have to be to cross Stilson Road at this point, which is basically around the curve in an area where you don't want to encourage any type of walking. And if I give you the pictures, I think you'll understand.
I actually, may I just?
Yeah.
Mr. Rizzio, like, I don't want to get into a debate with you exactly, but I just want to press you on this point because this is, at least for me, would be a non-starter. When I'm in better condition, I run past Osborne Hill, I go down Stilson and down that hill, and I usually go early in the morning.
Correct.
And around that curve, right where that point is, right now, you better, it's a scare, because the opposite sidewalks are murder on your legs downhill, the concrete. I have to tell you, though, that I would, if you're going to have two driveways there, I definitely think that you need to make that whole curve there, if you're going to civilize it, if you're going to take it away from nature, and you're going to, I think that would be a very good, safe way station. I don't think most people are going to try to cross in the middle of the road if they're walkers, but if you're a jogger and runner, and I'm not the only one who uses that curve to go down into Mill Plain Road, I think actually having some sort of way station sidewalk around that curve there
No, we have no problem taking from Mill Plain Road.
Right.
All the way up.
I understand, but you're concerned that it doesn't go all the way up
Our
the curve,
concern
up
is
the
that
hill.
if you go all the way up the hill, you put people in a dead-end situation just north of the curve. Now, let me just show you the picture.
Yeah, but
I can tell you right now.
I've run it, I know it pretty well, but all right.
I'd like to see the pictures.
Yeah, I'll send them along.
Pass them around.
I got a bunch. Yeah. So what
Are
happens?
these all the same? Oh, it's the same sets?
Yeah, that's a set for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with it too. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that.
Wouldn't want what?
What? Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
If you put,
Even if.
they're not, first of all, sidewalks aren't required in the A zone. R3 zone, I'm sorry. They're required in the A zone, and we're not,
Yeah.
we don't, when we subdivide this property in the future, we would have no problem doing that.
I want to explain to this because it's an issue with regard to the development. This is really a two-lot subdivision breaking off of a large family parcel. And there's a possibility of up to 11 lots over here. But to require sidewalks, the entire parcel, which don't exist now, are not being subdivided, is not part of a subdivision, to seem to me would be almost a non-starter, because you would be required to put sidewalks in on where there is no new development. What we're asking to do is basically for a waiver of sidewalks on this new area. And the reason is, if you take a look at this picture.
So you're asking for us to endorse you putting sidewalks where there's no development and not putting sidewalks where you are developing?
We really would like the right to reserve the ability to put sidewalks along Stilson at such point as that property subdivided.
Well, I get that, and I mean, that's, to me, seemingly, and I'm not getting into our debate, our
Sure.
discussion here, but it would seem to me that it'd be a more reasonable request for you to make that you not have to put sidewalks on frontage that's not being developed, but that you will put sidewalks on those lots that are being developed. And that would encompass the curve and that other part of Stilson Road, which would be a tremendous safety benefit.
The only issue I have with doing that, and like I said, obviously, it's in the commission's discretion. I'm just trying to bring to light the situation, which is if you look at the situation now, especially going around this curve, this is the curve you talk about as you come around on this Stilson Road. Well, as you climb up the road, the sidewalks are in great condition across the street. They're a uniform condition. They carry. The problem is, once you get to, which is the second telephone pole, then there's at least, I think it's 3 or 4 houses that before you get up to Hirsch Road, and there's no sidewalks there. So if somebody's taking a sidewalk up this portion of Stilson Road, where do you go? The only way to maintain and get on a sidewalk is to cross Stilson Road at probably its worst point. That's my understanding. And you don't have...
Where's that picture taken?
That would be basically this area.
Yeah, point it out on the
So
map.
you're talking about being 2 houses south, you're talking about basically stopping about 2 to 3 houses south of Hirsch.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
I think we honestly shouldn't litigate. We appreciate, I think, that you want to do this, but we'll have to discuss. I mean, I understand.
I just don't know where the people go.
I get it.
We've had other...
Point out on that map on the street where this picture is taken.
We're also, we keep talking about people going up. There's also an issue of people going down, who are
Down.
living in these houses and are going to wind up maybe someone walking to school too.
Hirsch Road.
Point it out on the map.
So this, let's go, Chris, see this, when you're looking at this picture, there's a telephone pole. That telephone pole is about right here.
And are we looking up or down the street?
You're looking...
That's going downhill and around the corner to Mill Plain Road.
Yep.
So it's like imagine Osborne Hills over here, and you're kind of going down this way and around.
Correct.
Like, you kind of curve around. Yeah,
Okay.
But I think we'll have to discuss this, but,
Yeah.
I mean...
Can I have my picture?
You're right. It's going to go downhill too. Exactly, yeah, if you're going from the house. Yeah, exactly, so...
That's what I thought. So as you're coming down, and then the sidewalk is on the other side of the road.
You gotta turn around, you see the sidewalk is on this side of the street? No, it's on this side, this is really how you gotta look at it, because, you understand what I'm saying, this is the close side.
That's what I'm saying, right. So that's right, this is the development side over here.
Right.
Where there's gonna be a sidewalk that he's saying is gonna end here, and then you have to cross and go across to this. Yeah, right. All right, we got it.
I'll obviously, it's implication. One request that we would respectfully make is that until this, I'm bringing to light what I think is the situation where sidewalks aren't required, but the commission in its discretion can require them. What I would request that the commission do is the area that's not really being subdivided, these are 2 lots split off, that we're not required to build hundreds of feet of sidewalk where there's no development, and it's basically just a carving off of 2 lots. I mean, it gets to be to the point where you almost, when you figure out the cost of the sidewalks for hundreds of feet, it's probably 600 feet of sidewalk for no houses that are being developed. We would ask if we could defer that until such time as that lot is subdivided.
Understood.
It just,
I understand.
at some point, it would make it no sense to even develop the lots if you have to do all these improvements for 2 road frontage lots.
Right, I understand, we understand.
And the other is just, as I said, a suggestion to the commission, but obviously in your own discretion.
Yeah.
The other issue is similarly, we would request that the commission, the Wetlands Commission has recommended a deed in lieu of open space. We would like to have a, what would you call, a proportional requirement with regard to that fee in lieu of open space, in that we have 2 half-acre lots, there's 4 acres lots remaining. We would prefer not to have to pay the whole open space fee for 2 lots. So in other words, if this property would be valued at $1 million, because it's got a potential of 13 lots, we would have to pay $100,000 split over 3 lots for a fee in lieu of open space. So we're just looking for some fair, proportionate way to allocate that fee as to relates to that these future lots will be required to pay a fee in lieu of open space. There's a potential of 11 lots there. There's 2 here. This is really only 1 acre being developed out of 5, and whether only a quarter of the fee would be paid at the development of these lots, and the balance would be paid at the development of this property, we would agree to put some sort of restriction on that. You're basically being we're creating 2 lots, and if we owned an acre and we split it into 2 lots, there'd be no fee in lieu of open space.
Correct.
We're only creating 2 lots, but
you're not,
the
because
existing piece of property,
You're actually creating a very large lot and 3 other lots. You've
No,
got
2 of them.
4.
We have 2 lots.
Ultimately, it's going to be, I understand that one other one, but, so, we understand your argument, but on what basis do we have discretion in order to revise the calculus on which we...
well, I think it depends on how you look at this, whether this was the carving away of 2 lots or a subdivision of an whole parcel. I mean...
But it is a subdivision of the whole parcel. How do I look at that legally in any other way?
Well, in looking at your subdivision regulations, and your fee in lieu of open space, a fraction of which, to me, it's in my mind, is what are you developing? And in this instance, we're cutting away 2 lots from a large lot. And I just think and maybe it would take, unfortunately, maybe your hands are tied, it would take some kind of amendment or some kind of a request of a separate request of an extension. But in this instance, it just seems we're trying to do a smaller development, and we're going to end up paying the price for an overall development. And we're just looking for some fair and proportionate way to attribute those costs. We're not looking to run from them at all.
What legal basis do I have to do that?
Mr. Rizzo, Attorney Rizzo, let me ask you this question. What happens if those 2 lots get subdivided off, and then the whole other piece gets sold as one piece on a whole, and at some point at a later date doesn't get subdivided?
Well, at some point...
Let's say that big lot gets sold to a developer, and they don't subdivide it, then we lose the fee in lieu.
You really haven't lost anything, because you've got 2 lots, and...
Just help me understand the legal basis on which we could grant the request that you're making.
Your regulation says a fraction of such payment, the numerator of which is 1, and the denominator, which is the number of approved lots in the subdivision, shall be made at the time of the sale of each approved lot in the subdivision and placed in a fund. So we're going to end up paying 1/3 of the overall value of the land for 2 half-acre lots. In my instance, we're only creating 2 additional lots. And whether you elect to read it that way or not, that would be the only way that I could justify that in front of you. That yes, it is a subdivision, but we're breaking up into only 2 lots. It's my only way of trying to present to the commission what would be a fair and equitable payment of this fee. Obviously, if you have a strict interpretation, strict reading of that regulation, and don't feel you have the opportunity to take such leeway, it's a third, a third, a third. So it's hard. Mrs. Ross is 92 years old. We're selling these lots, trying to, and I'm the first guy that'll tell you land use is not supposed to be personal. But sometimes there's instances where we're carving these 2 lots off to help pay for our care, and in the end, we could end up in a situation where we end up with a massive payment on really non-developed property yet. So it's a request, it's an ask, a little later, maybe a beg, but I just wanted to put that forward and see if the commission had any tolerance for a broader reading of your regulation. We would understand you're reading a strict regulation, but we would all, and that's it. Other than that, we meet all your regulations, we satisfy all the conditions, we've met all the requirements of the town engineer. We respectfully request the commission grant this application. One of the things that would be important for us would just be a deferral of the sidewalks until the Residence A portion was developed. And certainly you have the ability to make your own determination with regard to the Stilson Road parcel. It's a very simple 2-lot split of really, at the time, I guess it would have been a lot easier if when they took this lot, free cut this lot out, that they had split it in a different manner. It's unfortunate she wanted to keep the overall homestead. So when they took this free cut, if they had just taken that as the free cut, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. But unfortunately, I can't recreate time.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. I'll close the public hearing on this item, and I'll adjourn the meeting.